Hey everyone, welcome back to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your host, Russell Martin and Brent Aiken. Hey, listen, we know it's hard each and every week to do everything you need to do for your students. And so we hope that today's conversation will help you, that you will find insight and encouragement as you continue to lead your students in ministry. Before we start, I want to remind you to go to Talk Student Men at Talk Student Men on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and check out those. Give us a like, give us a follow. We'd love to connect with you there. Also, our website, studentministryconversations.org, has posts, has show notes from each episode, and we invite you to check out those resources as well. Well, we all know how important visual is and how important graphics and social media are. And so today I'm excited that we have a conversation between Brent and David Pruitt, and they talk about the importance of using design skills in youth ministry. So Brent, why don't you tell us a little bit more about today's conversation?
Yeah, so I sat down with David and we talked about design and all of the different avenues that it can be used and how useful of a tool it is to have in your repertoire. And with graphic and web design being things that I'm passionate about as well, I'm excited to share this interview with you.
All right, well, grab a cup of coffee and something to take a few notes with and enjoy this conversation with David Pruitt.
All right, guys, welcome back to Student Ministry Conversations, where each week we try our best to prove and to show everybody that regardless of whether you're new in ministry or a veteran in ministry, regardless of whether you're at a small church or a big church, you all have a voice and we all can learn from what your experiences are. And so today we are sitting down with David Pruitt, and I am really excited about this because David is a friend of mine. And we have done youth ministry side by side for quite a while now. And David is going to talk to us today about design. And so, David, before we get too far, man, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So, I would echo. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to do this. I've been listening to your podcast, and you guys are cranking out some amazing content, which has been cool. So I've been youth pastor in Snyder, Texas, at First Methodist here. I'll actually hit 7 years next week, I believe, the 27th, whenever that is. I don't know what today is. Been married for pretty much the same amount of time, right at 7 years, or almost 8, I guess. And we've got a son named Noah. He's 4. A little bit.
Awesome, man. Yeah. And so, like we said at the beginning of this, we are going to be talking about design. And so design is one of those things that, like, a lot of people, I guess, don't think they're skilled at it and stuff like that. But at the same time, youth pastors are often considered a jack of all trades, due to all the different kinds of tasks and everything else that we get assigned in the church. Sometimes we are also the janitor. Sometimes we are also the worship leader. Sometimes we're also the landscaper, everything else in between. And so what makes design and knowing how to design a skill set worth investing time into?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question. To me, I look at design. It's a part of everything, it's color and shape and form. Every business has a logo of some sort. Some have alternate logos. I have like 8 logos for mine, my design business side of it, as well as youth ministry, actually. I think it's so important to find different ways to communicate a message. And so design is a part of everything. I think about companies like Nike and Subway and McDonald's and just different things like that, that have built a sort of trust with their clients to a point that you basically find anytime that brand puts out content, you want to buy it. So like in the case of like Nike or for me, I'm also a musician, and so I'm hardcore into like guitar pedals and different things like that. Every time Gretsch puts out something, I want it. I have to have it. And so I think that's part of it, is there's sort of brand loyalty that comes with that. And so, yeah, like I said earlier, design is a part of everything. And so I think it's the more that we know as youth pastors and youth workers, about design, we can better communicate what we're trying to do. Because ultimately, our job is to spread the gospel, right? To help make Jesus's name known in students' lives. And there's such good design out there, and there's some youth pastors that just absolutely killing it with, even with their sermon series and being able to use videos and design for like slides and announcements and different things like that. Like, the better our content is, the more we can reach these students. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I totally agree. It helps. And I think it was really definitely something to take into consideration. A lot of the brands that we buy, we buy things because they look cool. We buy things because they're comfortable. We buy things, fill in the blank. And a lot of the time, it's all about the aesthetic to the eye. And so taking that and learning how to do that in ministry settings, or just for the entire church as a whole, or anything else you're involved in, it really gives an opportunity to kind of captivate eyes, and hopefully that leads to captivating hearts down the road. And so I've heard this from many different people, though, over the course of my time in youth ministry. The ones that don't have an eye for design, or the ones that you talk about design and they're like, I can't do that. I don't know how. All my designs are awful, or I only use Paint. I only use Microsoft Word to come up with slides, whatever. The people that don't really have an eye for design, or don't really have a skill set in it yet, how do you go towards fostering that?
Yeah. So I think, like with anything, I relate art and music, and design pretty much in the same format. Like, if I'm going to learn guitar, I've got to take the time to learn, right? And so the biggest thing is just beginning from somewhere. Like, what is something that you are interested in? Start there. So, like, for me, again, I'm super passionate about music, and so I may look at the history of music logos or something like that, something to find inspiration. But I think one of the things that we have the benefit of in this digital technological age is that there are resources and education literally everywhere, both in like YouTube. There's a resource I'll talk about later called Skillshare, where you can learn, like, there's like thousands and thousands of videos from designers teaching how to design. And you can pretty much learn any aspect, whether it be like straight up graphic design, or like presentation media, website design, animation, video work, all of that. And so the cool thing is that we have the ability to learn pretty much. It's like right there at our fingertips. But the big thing I would also say, especially to someone who's trying to learn for the first time, is the importance of understanding that, like with any learned skill, it takes time. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. We live in like a really fast-paced, like instant gratification culture, where I want it right now. And I want, like, what's the fast track to become a designer? I hear that all the time. Like, what's the fast track to becoming a really good designer? I'm like, there isn't one. Like, take the time to learn. And I always try to say that because sometimes it can be really discouraging when we look around. Like, a lot of designers use platforms like Instagram and TikTok as like a portfolio for what they can do in their design work, and they'll compare themselves like, man, I'm not getting followers as fast as other people. And I'm like, well, it's not about getting followers super fast or trying to, I think we've kind of social media to death design, but all of that to say, like, it takes time, if you try to fast track it, you're going to cut corners, and you're going to create and develop some bad habits in design. And I see a lot of that. So it takes time and patience and practice to really foster that. But if like with anything, if you work hard and you dedicate the time to it, you're going to be fine. And like I said, there's so many resources out there that you can find. Sorry, I work at a church with a daycare, and they're all outside playing and screaming. It's distracting. But yeah, just like I said, I think it takes a lot of time and practice, but it's worth it. It really is worth it.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think it's something that you can take into any realm of job down the road in the future too. You can use it for personal side business, because a lot of youth pastors have their own side business or side gig that they do. But then also, like, one of the things that I've always done with my group is my group really, really digs t-shirts. And we kind of use t-shirts as a timeline of where we've been to where we're going, kind of thing like that. And we plaster all of our t-shirts up on a wall to where people can go be like, oh man, I loved that trip, kind of thing like that. Just for the sake of, like, it gives them something to like look back and like remember fond memories. And it's an easy way to do it. But with that, you kind of have to have designs that kids want to wear. A lot of times you can pay designers to make them, but I've found that I have a lot more interest in the shirts if it's something made in-house. I have a lot more desire to wear the shirts if we kind of talk through the design with my associate youth pastor and then with our kids. And it's really, really hard to kind of include an outside graphic designer in that. So when you have the skill set, you can come in and just kind of in-house push that project out, or with church, making banners, or we have rack cards for our ministry, stuff like that. All that stuff works so well in-house, because then you have the ability to communicate effectively as well. And so really, really good stuff. So we've talked about how to, I guess, foster that. But that is really, I mean, in all honesty, it's something that takes a lot of time, and it might be something that we don't even necessarily have ideas of how that can be incorporated in everything that we do. So why don't you walk us through like a week in the life of David Pruitt, graphic designer, as far as like church, like where do you use graphic design? How do you implement it in your youth ministry? How do you implement it in your church? And then anywhere else that you might use it.
Yeah. So how much time do you have? For us, we have, it came out of the sort of 2020 quarantine COVID stuff, where we began to ask ourselves the questions: how can we put the maximum amount of resources into our people? Because, we're at home and we're not in church, we're not together. And so what can we do to put more material and resources into the hands of our church? And so I designed and developed a church app, like many churches are doing. It was one of those things where we realized, man, we got to do some things really, really fast. And so through that, we started making content like our Testimony Tuesday videos, which you've done with us. And we did our podcast as a church. And so as far as design goes, you need graphics for the videos. You need to know how to video. You need to know how to edit. And so I find myself spending a lot of times between designing like flyers and posters and like sermon graphics and announcement slides and different things like that, as well as recording like our Testimony Tuesday videos, recording our podcasts. And then right now we're doing an interactive sermon series on the life of Luke, while also doing like a topical open Bible study on Luke. And so in doing so, we've got kind of this dramatization of it. Like I've got one of my 7th graders, actually 7th and 8th grader who are playing the role of Luke, and this girl who sort of is following what Jesus is doing, and questioning and having their doubts and different things like that. And so being able to record that too. And so, yeah, from pretty much an everyday perspective, between designing sermon series, announcement stuff, and doing video work and stuff like that. There's so many different aspects, to being able to, again, using the word communication, to communicate, and give resources to our congregation, to our students. And so, yeah, there's pretty much, I don't have a day, outside of like Saturday, which is the day I take off, and I know I need to take more days off, but where I'm not designing something for the church. It's become an opportunity for me to really be able to serve, and utilize the gifts and talents that God's given me, pretty much in every aspect of ministry that we have in our church, which has been really, really cool, and something that I'm super thankful for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you took my design question and took it out of the standard idea of what design is, which is getting on a computer and like making some fancy little logo or making a business card or making a brochure. And you talked about video editing. You talked about how, like, the mindset of like how to like frame video. You talked about like the lighting and the ambience of like videos and stuff like that. That's all design. Like, that is, every part of that is design. And a lot of times we get into this rut of like, oh, well, I can't make a good looking flyer for the church potluck next week, or I can't do a cool sermon series graphic that looks neat and everything like that. But then at the same time, we forget that photography is design. We forget that video is design. We forget that, like, in all honesty, there's design in social media. There's design in your website. There's design in your merchandise. There's so much stuff. And there's so many different ways that you can kind of get your foot in the door when it comes to design. And really, like, the sky's the limit on where you start and where you end. I started when I did design for the first time. Going back and looking at some of my designs, I'm just like, oh, I really thought I was hot stuff back in the day. But just like our walk with Jesus, I think design is something that, like, we only get closer and better as we go, hopefully, at least. And so with that, like, it's really, really cool. And being someone that has kind of watched a bunch of different design strategies and stuff like that have passed through the past decade of like how churches approach design. It's an ever-changing thing. So if you think you're not good at it now, start studying, because it's going to change in the next 6 months to a year, and everybody's going to be doing something different. But so we've talked about design. We've talked about how to foster that and invest, like, why it's worth investing time into it and everything like that. But do you have tips, tricks, practices that you do as a, way to hone your skills that could be translated into someone that's just starting?
Yeah. So I think it's important to start with what you're passionate about. Like, if you're passionate about CrossFit, start looking at CrossFit design. Start looking at logos, start looking at videos, whatever it is that you're passionate about, start there. Because if it's not something that you care about, you're just not going to do well at it. There's a lot of clients I've had to say no to over the years because I just don't find life in it. And we talk a lot about that in ministry, is if you don't find life in it, don't do it, But I think design is exactly the same thing, especially when you're getting started. You're at this sort of pivotal moment in your quote unquote design career, where it's make or break. It's like, again, it's like picking up guitar. Like, if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep keep going, and so do something you're passionate about. So for me, it's I really like vintage, pretty much vintage anything. I like looking back and seeing. I'm also like hardcore into comic books and like space and like Star Trek, Star Wars, that kind of thing. And so I find a lot of inspiration in that. And so for me, I spend a lot of time looking at comic book design and vintage design and vintage music and different things like that. And so I surround myself with inspiration. I'll watch videos. I've got Instagram pages that I follow that are dedicated to some of the things that I just really enjoy. And so when you can surround yourself with that, you start to get an eye for it. Another thing, I have design books all over and stickers and posters, all kinds of stuff in my office that helps me. Guys like Stefan Kuntz, who has like lettering stuff and like posters. Will Patterson is a huge inspiration to me as far as logo and hand lettering, stuff like that. I've got this book by Ellen Lupton called Graphic Design Thinking. It's beyond just brainstorming ideas. Graphic design exercises. There's a vintage graphic design book by Stephen Heller that I really enjoy that goes more into vintage design. But the one that probably I get the most design inspiration from, and I know this is like for people in design circles, this is going to sound cliche, but Aaron Draplin, his Pretty Much Everything book is probably the biggest inspiration. I will caution, Aaron Draplin is definitely not a Christian, and so a lot of language. He's kind of a free-spirited 70s hippie, and so sometimes there's some colorful language in there, but yeah, the book just has tons and tons of logos and resources and how he started and pretty much his entire design journey. He talks about designing a logo from literally a sketch all the way to the final product and how to do that. And then he has tons of Skillshare videos, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, for me, it's all about just finding that thing that you're passionate about and finding inspiration and then just doing it, even if it's not good, it's something you can practice and get better at.
Yeah, that's totally good. And one of the things that I was going to recommend is one of my favorite books, is Steal Like an Artist by Austin. And so like the whole premise behind it is he talks about like 10 principles of design. And like the first one is the title of the book, Steal Like an Artist. The thing is like design is something that constantly rolls. Like you are not inventing the wheel in design. You are taking different elements of different things where you are passionate. You find things that you really like in designs, and then you incorporate them into your designs. Now, you don't copy verbatim because that is plagiarism and that is stealing someone's design. But you can steal like an artist to where you create, mash up, transform, do all different kinds of stuff that you can allow other people's art to influence how you see things. And so I love how you mentioned all those different artists that have the books out, because in all reality, we're just stealing other people's creativity. Like we see things in designs, and my wife is embarrassed from me all the time, because like we can walk into like Olive Garden and they can have like the little menu slides going on their TVs. And like, I pull out my phone and I'm like taking pictures of like designs that I like. We can be in Kohl's and I'll see like a little floor display that's like a graphic. And I'm like, oh, that is so cool. And I'll take a picture of it. And like, I just take pictures all over wherever I go, because like the thing about graphic design is I genuinely think there's not something else in the entire world where literally you can find influence and creativity everywhere. Hands down, like you literally can walk into any store, any building, any anything. You can go to a park and you can be inspired to make a graphic. And so the design process and the thing about it is it's really, really important to find what you're passionate about. Like you said, that's a really, really big deal. But then the second thing that he talks about in the Steal Like an Artist book is to don't wait until you know who you are to start making things. Make things, make constant things. Like every time you can sit down and design something. Even if it's just for the sake of like your own hobby in person, and then alter how you do it. I do graphic design. I draw all the time. My son has a 3D pen, which I steal all the time and just make my own little projects because it's a lot of fun and it still gets my creative juices flowing with how to be a effective designer in all the different scenarios that I have. And ultimately, it's going to push you to be more creative in different ways, and it's going to make your designs stand out. Because when you are being influenced from so many different realms and areas, I mean, like your work's going to look like something completely different because you steal from so many different areas and avenues.
Yeah. Stefan Kuntz, one of his main mantra in design, he's more of a hand lettering artist, but he's a designer as well. And he says, create something today, even if it sucks. And that's his whole thing. Like every single day, just create, just do it. Like it, so many times we think about doing it and it's kind of like that social media highlight reel. Like we're going to take 1,000 pictures to get the one. And it's like, and we'll caption it like rolling out of bed. Like, and I'm like, yeah, but you've been working for 2 hours to get that perfect picture. Stop trying to make it perfect and just do it. Just draw, like create something, even if it sucks, and do it every single day. And like, you'll be amazed. Like if you fill up a sketchbook, like day one, and like, I love putting the date on it when I sketch something, because then when I go back and I finish a book and I just start flipping through it, I'm like, man, like the best measure for me as a designer is when I make something I think is ultra cool and I look at it a month later and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, that's so good, because to me, that means I'm growing, right? And I'm becoming better. I'm always pushing the envelope to become better. And so there's so many things that, like some of my designs that people just really love. And I look back, I'm like, dude, what was I thinking? Like, that's horrible. But then at the same time, it's encouraging to know that I'm growing. And so create something today, even if it sucks. Thanks, Stefan Kuntz.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really funny that you bring up the whole like Instagram person where they take 100 photos and pick one that actually works, because that was actually how when I took photography in college, that was our assignments. We had to go out and we had to take like 400 pictures.
Yeah.
And we had to come back and we had to pick our best 10 out of that 400. And those were our showcase photos for the next day in class. And we had different topics and everything like that. But like same premise with design. Like when you see something out and about wherever you are, stop, think about it and be like, man, how could I incorporate this? Like, I love this design, or I love the way that they use these boxes, or I love the font in this kind of thing like that. Take it, run with it, and move on. And honestly, I just about a month and a half, 2 months ago, bought an iPad Pro. I legitimately have a piece of digital paper and a pen with me wherever I go. So I will be sitting at a coffee shop, or I'll be sitting in a restaurant with my pen and my iPad, and I'll just start sketching and Googling, like doodling on like designs that I see and stuff like that. And it just keeps your creative brain going. And that's the big thing with it, is you constantly have to keep developing the creative process in your mind. And eventually, just like anything else, it becomes habit. And then you can look at something and be like, oh, I'm totally going to use this for this and take this from this. And it's already like rolling through your head before you even really like realize what's going on. But same thing with anything else.
Mm-hmm. That actually leads me to something I really want to make sure that I say. With design and creativity, there's there's always this sort of fear of failure and rejection that comes with it. And I think that's part of what makes art so hard is that, number one, art is subjective. Like, just because you like it doesn't mean everybody else will. But if you like it and it's something that brings you life, who cares if anybody else likes it? Don't be afraid to fail. The other side of it too is like with logo design, maybe my favorite aspect of logo design is that you have to fail to succeed. Like for every logo that I design, I sketch out 50 to 100 different variations. And that means that one or two are going to succeed and 98 are going to fail. So if you look at that strictly from a, data analysis standpoint, I fail more than I succeed. Is that a bad thing? No, because the failures inform. Like every time I create another, I draw another thing, I'm getting one step closer, and that's just the process of it. And so you have to fail until you get to a place where you succeed. And so it's not even really failure at that point. It's just the process. And so don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to be rejected in your design, because trust me, I have created even this year. I've been designing since I was 14. I'm 31. So I've been doing it for a long time. And as far as drawing goes, I've been drawing since I was 3. One of my dad has this drawing that I did of the Denver Broncos logo, because I thought it was really cool, because it was a horse with, I thought the horse's hair was on fire, so I thought it was a fire horse for some reason. And so my dad said I would constantly draw the Denver Broncos logo, and so I started at 3 drawing stuff. But like even then, I look back on it, was terrible, but now I could probably draw it from memory because I've looked at it so many times. I think that's just the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail. It's all part of it, and it's the process. And just because a few people may not like it doesn't mean it's not good or it doesn't have merit and value. So yeah, it's all part of it.
No, that's good. And I mean, definitely something that you brought up with it is it's an age-old expression, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so like, it doesn't matter what other people think, like you said, as long as you find value in what you're making, that's great. Now, also to comment on the 100 designs to pick too, that doesn't mean that you're going to do that every single time you design something for church. But when you have those projects that are going to like brand your ministry, or those projects that are going to be like a concrete thing in your program for a long time, yeah, those are the ones that you're like, let's go through, like, let's try 30 to 50 to 100 designs. Let's look at different colors. Let's look at different design styles. Let's look at all these different things, and then go and let's make that happen. There are things that I put out week to week. We do advertisements for upcoming events in our bathrooms. We just call them, like, real creative name, bathroom ads. But like,
nice. That's cool. We stealing that, by the way.
Basically though, with that, like, I don't take near as much time on those. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we'll just do this, move this over here, and make sure the time, make sure the date, make sure all the important information's on it, and move on. Those change weekly to every, like, a couple times a month. And so it's really not something that I want to devote or dedicate a ton of time to. Graphic design can be time consuming, but it can also, especially when you get experienced and practiced in it, stuff like that, it can come out real fast. And you'll prioritize projects that you want to spend more time on and projects that you don't want to spend more time on. I prioritize t-shirts a lot, because t-shirts are something that lasts forever, or as long as the t-shirt lasts. But it's something that, like, kids could potentially wear for years down the road.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the kids wear those to school, and it's an advertisement for our program.
Free advertising. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I spend a lot of time on t-shirts just because I want them to be different. I want them to be unique. And I try and change up the design and the color and the style of it every single time we put out a new t-shirt. And it's really, really cool. It's a lot of fun. It challenges me to think outside of the box because I'll be like, all right, we did a red shirt and then a gray shirt and then a blue shirt and then a purple shirt and then a brown shirt. Now we just did a maroon shirt. Like, what other color have we not used? And so then to an extent, I'm not going to do like a neon orange shirt because no one's ever going to probably wear a neon orange shirt, at least for a long period of time. And so like I cycle through the regularly worn colors, but it's something like, how can I make this design pop on this color? What style can I make this into? What style can I use? Stuff like that. And it challenges me. It gives me an opportunity to grow because I really seek out inspiration from other people and places when I make t-shirts. And it's a completely different process than my week-to-week advertisements for the church. Because I'm not going to spend 3 hours on a design for our church potluck that I'm going to take down next week because it's not worth my time. But t-shirts, mission trip, logos, stuff like that, I'll spend a lot more time on those because I want them to be remembered and I want them to be stuff that's looked back on constantly. So continuing on in our discussion, we talked about a bunch, and I mean, realistically, the sky's the limit with design. We could probably sit here and talk for a couple hours, and continue, and we might kind of transition this into maybe some blog posts or something to that nature. Just for the sake of, there's a ton of stuff that you really kind of have to see. And it's not something that you can audibly listen to. And so we might kind of transition this into some blog posts down the road as well. But do you have any resources that you would recommend for someone wanting to start learning how to design, or for someone to get better at designing? All of the above.
Yeah. So I like to do both free and paid because I also know that, hey, we're youth pastors and we don't make a lot of money. Well, a lot of us don't. And so YouTube will be your best friend. I mean, you can pretty much watch anything for free on YouTube. There are thousands of designers on there. I'll go ahead and shameless plug. My friend Will Patterson literally has a YouTube channel that he started in, I want to say like 2015 or 16. So he has thousands of videos on design, especially logo design, church design. He's kind of run the gambit on that. But yeah, Will Patterson, he's a designer out of kind of the London, England area. So he's also fun to listen to with his accent. But he's also a church guy. Like, he's not like, he's actually spoken to my youth during the COVID time. We were doing Zoom like most other youth groups. And so I had him come in and speak. So he's an incredible guy. He's a worship leader and has done youth ministry as far as like volunteering, stuff like that. So he has a heart for church. And so he'll talk a lot about God in his videos too. So there's a lot of things that you can connect to with him. So he's fantastic to learn from. Ian Barnard and Stefan Kuntz, they're all Christian designers and letterers. And then another thing, Skillshare. Skillshare pretty much has the gambit of anything that you want to learn in design, whether that be like graphic design, as far as like we've talked about, like digital media. There's photography, videography, animation, music, all kinds of stuff on Skillshare. It's not the cheapest thing anymore. I'm kind of grandfathered in. I've been part of Skillshare since it started. But even like Will Patterson, he does Skillshare videos for them. And so he has like 3-month trial links or whatever. If you watch his videos, like you can like get his little code and get Skillshare like 3 months free or something like that. It gives you a chance, if nothing else, to learn and decide if it's something that you want to invest in. I think education is something that's worth investing in, which is ironic because I don't have a college degree, but I started my degree in design and just ran out of money. But I think anytime you can invest some money in learning more is huge. So yeah, YouTube and Skillshare are probably the fastest ways to find whatever you're looking for using your passions, like we talked about earlier, um, and stuff. So that's where I would start. I would also throw in there too, like if you guys would like to connect with me, I would be more than happy to. If you're in our area, I could like meet you at a coffee shop and we could talk, or we can do like a Zoom or a FaceTime kind of thing. And I'd love to talk to you one on one and kind of coach you on the things that I know. Because I think that there's also value in being able to connect with somebody who does design and can kind of see exactly what you're doing and kind of critique and stuff like that. And so I think there's a lot of value in having people that you can connect with, because sometimes that's the hardest part is like, yeah, I have all these videos, it can kind of be overwhelming. And so if I can be a resource to you day or night, like that's what I'm here for. And so I would love to connect with you and happy to teach you for free, by the way, for free. Did I say free?
Free for free, for free, for free, for free. So once again, though, speaking of like design and stuff like that, that was designed, that was put together, those commercials. And now it's something that like everybody knows about and everybody repeats over and over and over. But so also the other thing with that is there's a lot of resources and training videos and stuff like that. But for someone that maybe doesn't have maybe someone who is just getting into it and doesn't really know where to go as far as like software or design platforms or anything like that. Instead of just saying like, what are your favorites? Because I know that you use some of the more expensive stuff when it comes to like Photoshop and stuff like that. Can you give us a pricing tier? Maybe start with like maybe some free ideas where like you can hit the ground running, and then maybe some moderate like in betweens, and then of course you have your creative suite down on the more expensive side. But like, what are your go-tos?
Okay, so I realize every designer in the world is going to cringe at me saying this, but I think it's a great way to start as far as inspiration. Canva is not terrible. I am not a huge fan personally, just because I like to create my own content. Brent is probably ready to shoot me right now, but I think Canva is a great way to start. And I can't say that I haven't used it. When I use it, it's something like what Brent said is sometimes you get that, hey, I need this graphic. Like, great, cool. When do you need it? Yesterday. And I'm like, well, I've got 100 things I need to do, and I don't have time to like sit with an open canvas and try to come up with something, because I'm a logo designer at heart. I'm going to create 100 different things. I don't have time for that some days. And so sometimes it's not the worst thing to go grab Canva or another resource, Adobe Spark. I haven't used that one in a long time either, but it's kind of a template based graphic design place where you can kind of start, and you can start seeing, oh, okay, so this is how it's compromised or compromised. This is how it's comprised. Like, oh, okay, so there's a background, and then you layer up an icon with some type, and you start to see, oh, okay, so this is what the design elements, and there's a hierarchy in design. Will Patterson talks a lot about hierarchy in design. Google it. Trust me, there's some great stuff there. And understanding hierarchy is incredibly important. But it's a great place to start. Totally free. I will say this with Canva, Don't pay for anything. Like, it's not, if you're going to pay for something, go create your own content. But with Canva, do it for free. It's a great place to start. Another really, really great app, especially if you have an iPad, is Procreate. It's a $10 app, one-time thing. You'll never have to pay for anything else. Procreate is literally my go-to. I use Procreate and Illustrator for everything. And I'll get into Illustrator, but Procreate is a $10 app. You can also get it on an iPhone. They have what they call Pocket Procreate. But if you have an iPad and a pencil, or even when I first started, iPad Pro wasn't a thing. So I had an iPad mini and a really bad stylus, and I would draw on there, and it was a really just a great way to get ideas out. For $10, it is the biggest steal I've ever seen. Another free program, which I would call an alternate to Illustrator, is Vectornator. Vectornator Pro on the iPad Pro. It's also on Mac. I don't know if they have a PC version, because I'm pretty much all Mac, which is another design platform. I remember the hundreds of commercials, the Mac versus PC guy, and they had Justin Long in there, and like, oh, okay, I don't want to be that suit and tie old guy with a PC. So that they totally got us, man. They duped us, and our generation, millennials, were like, oh, I have to have a Mac. But for what I do, it actually is helpful. Yeah, Vectornator Pro, it's a free program, and you can do vector designs as you would in Adobe Illustrator. It's got a lot of the tools. I would say it's very comparable. And so, like, if I don't have my computer around and I just have my iPad, which they do have Illustrator for the iPad now, so I started using that. But Vectornator Pro is totally free, and you could put out vector stuff. And so, like, the reason why vector is important, as Brent knows, is when you're printing, you need something that's scalable. And like Photoshop pixel-based type stuff, it pixelates every time you edit. It's not scalable. And so vector is, you can blow it up to literally any size you want. If you want to put it on a big billboard, it's not gonna degrade the art. And so vector base is really, really important when you're doing t-shirts and banners and stuff like that. And so yeah, use the heck out of Vectornator Pro. It's free. There's no reason why anybody shouldn't use it. But then leading into, if you want to pay, you have the budget, you have the resources for it, especially if your church pay for it. My church pays for it. Well, they used to. I pay for it now, just because I use it personally for my design business, and I just didn't feel right let the church pay for it anymore. But the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite literally gives you every single program. If you have the money and you can swing it, I think the Adobe Creative Cloud is incredible. I use Photoshop and Illustrator, After Effects, and Premiere all the time. Premiere for video editing, After Effects for some video editing and animation stuff, and then Illustrator for all my vector stuff, Photoshop for photo manipulation and like mock-ups and stuff. So if you have the budget for that, I would definitely recommend it, and would be happy to help you in using any of those programs that I recommended.
Yeah, so this is where me and David clash, because I use Canva for 95% of my graphics. I don't use Photoshop at all. The other program that I use, because Photoshop is way too expensive, even at I think it's whatever the monthly subscription is. I used to use Photoshop when it was the like pay $300, $500 for the program, and then I'd keep it for years, and I wouldn't like upgrade until I had to. And it worked for me. I actually got off Photoshop when I moved into the monthly subscription, because I did not like that at all. And so that's the other thing, is you have to find what works for you. I use Canva for like I said, probably about 95% of my design, and whether that's on websites, whether that's on t-shirts, whether that's on anything. The other thing that David might not know is Canva has updated and upgraded quite a bit since he probably used it last. And Canva does allow vector graphics now. You can use SVG files in Canva now, which is SVG is just short for sharp vector graphics. And so that's even available in Canva. But one other thing that I wanted to mention about Canva is I would say the majority of the people that listen to this podcast, hopefully are student pastors. If you are a nonprofit organization, you can get Canva for your church for free. You can do Canva for nonprofit. And basically, as long as you are a charitable 501c3 organization, it is completely free of charge. And you get their Canva for Work account, which has all of their design photos and graphics and images. Everything is free on Canva for Work because it's a subscription that you normally pay for, but they give it to nonprofits for free. So in this, I actually have previously done a how to get you signed up for Canva for nonprofits, and I'll probably link that in the show notes for this podcast. But I mean, in all reality, like Canva has everything. You can make videos on Canva now. You can make animated GIFs. You can make everything. They're really trying to make it a one-stop shop, and I am a Canva junkie. But the other program, when I find very, very few things that I can't do in Canva now, the other thing that I use is a cheaper alternative to Photoshop and Illustrator, and I use the Affinity design software. And so I use Affinity Photo and Affinity Design, I think maybe. Those are both $50 one time, and you own the program and never have to pay for it again. They update it, and you never have to like buy a newer model of it. Like you get the updates when it comes in. Literally, the program costs $50. They have, I think they even have apps that you can download on your iPad and phone and everything like that. So there's so many different opportunities out there. Really, it's just a matter of finding what works for you and making it work for everything that you do. Like I said, I love Canva just for the sake of I can go into Canva and I can make anything. And that is a great thing. I love that all my stuff is in one spot. I love that it's web-based. That is one of the beautiful things about Canva is if I'm away from my computer that has Affinity Design and Affinity Photo, I'm stuck because I don't have those programs on other computers. And I can access Canva on my phone. I can access it on my iPad. I can access it on any computer with internet connection. And that genuinely was the game changer for me. So, like I said, everybody has different preferences, but there are some awesome resources out there for anybody and everybody to get into design.
For what it's worth, you can do all that with the Adobe Creative Cloud with your phone and iPad too. Just want to make that aware.
No, you're good. You're good. So, but that's the thing though, is once you kind of find your spot, you kind of stay away and get out of the news of everybody else. And that's why you need to listen to different people that have different voices, because I did not know that. I hardly know anything about Adobe Creative Suite because I don't use it and I don't pay attention to it. But that's the beauty.
There's nothing wrong with that. I want to make that clear. Like I dog Brent and Brent dogs me, but like, I mean, he hit it right on the nail there. Like whatever works for you, be unapologetic about it. Like just do your thing, find your passion, and it's going to be great. Honestly. I mean, doesn't matter what.
Well, and I wish I could remember the designer that I was listening to one time. And he said, it doesn't matter the platform that you use if you're good at what you do. He said, I can make stuff in Microsoft Paint that like resembles what people do in Adobe Photoshop. He's like, it just matters how you know what you're doing and what resources and what avenues you know to get around problems. And that's all about creative. Yeah, that's in any aspect. When you have a problem arise, we're hopefully all creative where we can be like, all right, well, plan B, C, D, E, running out of backup plans. So now I'm just going to wing it. Like, hopefully, as youth pastors, all of us have that side of creativity. that allows us to kind of fly off the cuff on occasion, because it happens. We are always put into situations where we have to kind of think outside of the box and make things happen. And that's the same way with design. So whatever you use, find something that fits you, and then also just utilize it to the best of your ability. And so finally, David, this has been great stuff. Is there anything else you want to share? We'd love to have your social media so people can connect with you. And then also, if you have any shameless plugs, you can obviously plug your graphic design business and anything else that you want to plug.
Yeah. So if you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram, David Pruitt Design Co. And then my website, because I do have the Adobe Creative Cloud, I did go with the free website for like a portfolio thing. It's David Pruitt Design Co. at myportfolio.com, which is really long. I'll give it to Brent in his show notes. All the links will be there for you to go to. But yeah, if you ever need help with that, I'm happy to design for you. But I would love, like Brent said, I think there's so much value in being able to do it in-house. And so if I can coach you or mentor you in some way and help you get to a point where you can do it yourself, that's ultimately what I'm about. And so I have no qualms in trying to be like the designer for everybody. I kind of started that way. All of my design stuff, actually, I think Brent was one of the people who told me I've got to start charging for my stuff. But for the longest time, I did it for free because I just wanted to be a ministry resource. To me, design was a gift, an ability that God gave me, and a passion that He gave me, and I just wanted to help people. And so, though I do charge for my work now, I'm still all about cultivating the next generation, and even my generation, other people or older than me, that I can help develop. And so, and like I said, I totally do that for free. I'm a resource. Use me. Please use me. I would love to partner with you and help you and show you the ropes, and definitely the mistakes and pitfalls that you can avoid as well. So.
Awesome. Well, and like we said, we will put all of this, since there were a ton of resources and a ton of links and stuff that we talked about today, all of that will be in the show notes where you can go back and look through it on our website, studentministryconversations.org. And then down the pipeline, we are looking at Student Ministry Conversations merch, and David Pruitt is designing all of that merchandise. So we are super excited to see how that comes out. And hopefully you will see it in our website on our new store page coming soon. And man, we're just excited to get that stuff out to you guys as a way for y'all to support our podcast, but then also hopefully have some amazing designs by the one and only David Pruitt. But with that being said, thank y'all again for joining us this morning. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop one in the comments on any of the platforms that you listen to. You can talk to David directly. You can ask us questions on the podcast. We want to hear from you, and we want to have y'all involved as much as possible. With that also being included, we also want y'all on the podcast. So if you have something that you think is valuable to add to the conversation, message us, send us an email, podcast@studentministryconversations.org. We would love to hear from you and your ideas on how you can join the conversation with us. But until next week, we will see y'all later. Peace out.
Wow, that was a great conversation. And I am so glad that David is so willing and able to help anybody. And so please take him up on that offer. Contact him and he can help talk you through doing design. And I think he'd be a great resource for anybody listening. Hey, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sitting down and taking the time to listen to this conversation. And we hope that it encouraged you and inspired you, and that maybe you found something you can use as you continue to pour into the lives of your students.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, we would ask that you leave a comment and a rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We would appreciate that so much. And also, maybe you know someone who would benefit from this conversation. Take a moment and share this with them on social media. Tag them and also tag us at Talk Student Men on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Now, Russell, you have next week's episode. What do we have in store for the podcast next week?
Yeah, I'm excited to sit and talk with a friend of mine, Lauren Bedevian. And Lauren is a children's director at a large church here in the Houston area. And we're going to talk about how children's ministry and youth ministry work together. I know that there are many churches that have a combined ministry, a next gen ministry, and some things like that. But how do you work with two separate ministries, still working together and having the best interest of families in mind, the best interest of programs in the church, and how can they not be siloed, but be one ministry through the church, working together to help families and students and children.
Man, that sounds great. I can't wait to hear the conversation next week. Just a reminder, be sure to go to studentministryconversations.org for show notes and links from this episode and all of our other episodes. Just search for this week's episode number in the search bar. We also have helpful articles and blog posts on there as well. And like we said in this episode particularly, we were going to ask David to come back and write some blog posts about design, and those can be found on the website in the next coming weeks. So again, thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.